I used to think I was incredibly lucky to have met him, a man I trusted as a solid rock, a peaceful harbor after all the storms in my past. He wasn't like any other man I'd met before, not flashy, not overly romantic or cheesy. He was practical, calm, and endlessly patient. He knew when to speak and when to stay silent. He always gave me those gentle looks that made me feel safe, loved, without having to hide or put on a front. I had been betrayed before, more than once. My ex had cheated on me with my best friend, a deep wound that made me think I'd never open my heart again. But then he came along, gentle yet steady, helping me believe in love and life once more. We got married after a few years of dating, a simple life, but full of love. He was the one I could share everything with, from everyday little things to my deepest worries. We had a group of friends we hung out with often, making beautiful memories together. I fit in pretty well with the group. Most were friendly and welcoming. But there was one person who made me feel like an outsider, Claire, his childhood best friend. Claire was never outright rude or openly hostile, but I could always feel the coldness and distance she put up whenever she was around. She never spoke to me directly and always kept her distance. Even when we were in the same room, she'd only talk to him, completely ignoring me. That indifference made me question if I was being too sensitive, but the uneasy feeling kept growing. Claire never joined the group hangouts. She only occasionally invited him out one-on-one, and he always honestly told me about it, but I couldn't help feeling uncomfortable. I tried many times to make peace, inviting Claire to birthdays, barbecues, even our wedding. But she refused again and again, always claiming she was busy or just not interested. I asked him about it, and he said Claire was just a little socially awkward, and that maybe I was overthinking things. But my heart wouldn't let go of those uneasy feelings. I still clearly remember those nights lying next to him, with a quiet anxiety rising inside me. Claire felt like an invisible ghost, always present in every moment, making me doubt, fear, and unable to fully trust. Even so, I tried to hold on to my faith in him, believing he would never betray me like my ex. I told myself I wouldn't let the past haunt and ruin this future. But then everything started to change when one day, Claire sent me a message. "Hey, I'm working on a photography project. Would you be interested in modeling for me?" Weeks after receiving Claire's message, I still couldn't shake the shock and confusion. Those words felt like a wound deep inside me. Each time I remembered them, my heart ached like 1,000 cuts. Her invitation to model for her photography project initially sounded like a chance to heal, to bridge the gap between us. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a sincere offer. It could very well be a cunning trap, a scheme designed to put me in a vulnerable position, to hurt me even more. I couldn't deny the hesitation, fear, and suspicion. Part of me still wanted to believe we could find peace again, but the other part was on high alert, like a trapped animal cornered in a snare. When I talked to my husband about it, he gently told me to give it a try, saying, "I'll go with you, so we can face Claire together, and you won't feel alone." Those words were like a tiny life raft, calming the undercurrents inside me, and I gradually agreed, promising myself I would face it with strength. On the day of the appointment, we arrived at Claire's studio, and I immediately sensed something was off. The space wasn't spacious or cozy, but cold and empty, making me feel like an outcast in my own life. Claire stood there with sharp eyes, a cunning and mocking smile, deepening my sense of being nothing more than a lifeless doll. The studio had only a few sparse props hastily arranged in a cramped room, adding to my confusion. Then she handed me an outfit. It was an outdated, flashy, and extremely short outfit, forcing me to bend carefully just to avoid exposing sensitive parts. I felt utterly ashamed, as if being made a joke in front of an invisible crowd. Yet, I tried to stand tall, despite the embarrassment and fear weighing heavily on my heart. Claire began directing me on how to pose. She told me to look like a young girl standing before the camera for the first time, awkward and shy. I felt like a pawn on her chessboard, voiceless and powerless. The atmosphere in the room grew so suffocating and cold I nearly couldn't breathe, as if trapped in a play I never wanted to be part of. Before I could adjust to that feeling, the studio door suddenly swung open. Claire's mother, sister, and a few relatives rushed in, their eyes curious yet laced with mocking smiles. They claimed to be checking out Claire's project, but the way they looked at me made me feel like an animal on display, scrutinized and humiliated. Claire's mother shouted loudly, unable to hide her mockery. "I can't believe she dares to stand here modeling. What a bold one! Who knows what this replacement will do next?" Claire's sister laughed loudly, like salt in my wound. "Claire is the one worthy of standing by him, not her." I hurriedly scanned for my husband, silently hoping he'd stand up for me, stop them. But he stood there silently, eyes avoiding mine, not uttering a word. That silence was a knockout punch to my heart, making the pain of betrayal deeper than any mocking words could. I couldn't take it anymore. Ran into the nearby dressing room, closed the door, and sobbed uncontrollably. My tears flowed not only from being insulted, but also from the feeling of abandonment within my own marriage, from wounds no one understood. I cried for the deepest loneliness, for the betrayal without explanation, for the broken trust that couldn't be mended. That moment was a turning point. I knew things would never be the same. Claire was no longer just an old friend, but a silent threat, quietly destroying my life. And my husband, whom I once trusted completely, no longer had the strength to stand by me, to protect me from those wounds. I promised myself I wouldn't let this go on for even one more day. I needed to stand up, to be strong, to free myself from the chains of the past and the darkness Claire and he had brought into my life. I came home burning up inside, tears still fresh on my cheeks, and I dragged him into the living room, unable to hold back any longer. "How can you just stand there and watch them humiliate me like that without saying a word? Do you even realize how much pain and hurt I'm in? You're my husband, yet you act like nothing's happening." He just sighed, looking at me with tired eyes and a hint of mild anger. "I already told you, it's just a joke. Claire and her family didn't mean any harm. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I don't want to lose old friends over some silly remarks." I spat out each word, trying to hold back my anger. A big deal? What big deal? They called me the replacement. They insulted me, laughed at me right in front of you, and you just stood there silently. You say you're on my side? You want me to believe you? Believe what? That you're okay with me being treated like the third wheel in our own marriage? He frowned, his tone turning colder. "I've been trying to keep the peace. You're too sensitive, trying to blow things out of proportion and make everything messy. Don't put yourself at the center of the world like that." I couldn't take that contempt anymore. Tears mixed with anger as my voice cracked. "You talk like you haven't done anything wrong, like I'm the one exaggerating everything. But you forget that you're the one who let her creep too far into our lives. You betrayed me from the start. You protect her and her family more than you protect me, your wife." He looked at me, eyes flickering with guilt, but trying to stay strong. "You talk like I'm a traitor. I've been honest with you. I never crossed any lines. You're being unreasonable, doubting me." I sneered, tears still streaming down. "Honest? Like when you texted her behind my back? When you secretly met up with her? When you stayed silent while she and her family publicly humiliated me? I'm not an idiot, and I'm done with your lies." The heated argument lasted late into the night. We were both exhausted, but inside I was left with the raw pain of betrayal, emptiness, and despair. After that fiery night of heated arguments, tear-streaked faces, and heavy, choked-up sighs, I felt a fierce flame inside me that refused to die out. But I knew that relying only on feelings and vague pain would leave me forever lost in the dark. I needed a truth, a clear and undeniable truth, to face and finally free myself. The love I once gave him, my only safe haven to hold on to, had now turned into a sharp double-edged sword, cutting deeper each day without healing. And I knew only the truth could heal those wounds. I decided to begin a quiet, determined journey, like a detective in the very home that once was my sanctuary. Every day I scrutinized the smallest details: hidden messages on the phone, unusual midnight calls, unexplained absences. My mind was clouded by dark clouds of doubt and pain, making every passing moment suffocating and hard to breathe. Then, as if by cruel fate, one day he carelessly left his phone on his desk. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst. My hands trembled as I picked it up and opened the messages, where lies and hidden truths awaited my discovery. The light from the screen revealed long, affectionate messages full of hidden meaning between him and Claire. Their conversations were no longer just friendly. They were sweet words, secret promises, and clandestine meetings that tore my heart apart piece by piece. Every line was a cold dagger stabbing straight into the trust I once gave him. But I didn't stop there. I kept following that path of lies. Late-night calls, messages after work, even voice recordings he never confessed to me. It all unfolded like a dance of deception and betrayal, where he was not only dishonest, but deliberately erecting a dark veil separating us. I felt betrayed twice. Once by Claire, the intruder invading my married life, and once again by the man I had once placed all my trust and hope in. The pain compounded by disappointment made it impossible to stay calm. When he came home, I no longer hid anything. Sharp, decisive questions shot at him like arrows. What are you hiding from me? Why can't you be honest? Why did you betray me? But he avoided my gaze, dodging with vague, shallow explanations like a criminal fleeing the light. I knew full well he was hiding something. Living with a stranger, the man I once called my husband, made my heart ache with each beat, like someone mercilessly squeezing it. Each passing day, the conflicts between us grew fiercer. The relentless fight swept me into a whirlwind of pain. I was exhausted. I no longer had the strength to hide the deep wounds inside. As for him, he seemed to lose patience with my endless suspicions, growing colder and more distant than ever before. I realized a harsh truth. Without a decisive change from him, this relationship would be nothing but a shattered mirror beyond repair. I stood on the edge of collapse, like a tightrope walker suspended above the void, each step threatening to plunge me into the depths of despair. Those days were full of shock, confusion, and despair. I didn't know how to save my heart or rescue the marriage I had once poured my soul into. Each long night was a test. I asked myself if I had the strength to keep walking this thorny path, whether love was truly dead in his heart, or if a small flicker of hope still glowed. In the days after discovering that shocking truth, my soul felt burned by an unquenchable fire, causing me sleepless nights and growing doubts by the hour. One fateful evening, as I was getting ready for bed, my husband received an unexpected call. His voice was gentle, tinged with sadness, making my heart tighten. Right after hanging up, he hurriedly changed clothes, saying Claire was in crisis and he needed to go comfort her. Those words burned away the last of my remaining trust. Rage surged fiercely, mingled with uncontrollable suspicion. I couldn't believe he'd leave just to console a mere friend. While he wasn't paying attention, I quietly turned on the location tracker on his phone, my tension rising to the max. After changing clothes, he rushed out of the house. Following the tracker, I silently trailed him, heart pounding as his destination appeared. A small, dimly lit, secluded bar. I hid in the shadows, standing in a corner, eyes fixed on them with a tormenting ache. Before I could even calm down, I saw Claire approach my husband with calculating eyes that made my blood run cold. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around him and pressed a burning, passionate kiss on his lips, so intense my heart felt shattered into pieces. I trembled, waves of betrayal surging uncontrollably. Holding a glass on the table, I stepped closer, silently staring at them with cold, sharp eyes. Claire turned to look at me, a smug smile spreading across her lips, as if to boast her victory, while my husband stood there, confused and speechless. I said nothing, just turned my back, leaving behind their shocked and regretful gazes. My husband hurried after me, panic in his voice as he called me back. But when Claire held him tightly, feigning tears, he sat down beside her, soothing and caressing her as if nothing had happened. That scene was like a dagger straight to my heart, a brutal blow of unforgivable betrayal. The man to whom I had given all my love now so easily abandoned me to pamper another woman, one who always stood in the shadows, creeping into every corner of our lives. I stood there, aching, desperate, and more exhausted than ever. I realized I no longer had a place in his life, and the marriage I once thought was solid was now just silent shards falling to the ground. After everything I had seen, heard, and felt, I knew I couldn't keep accepting this deception for one more second. Everything inside me had shattered into pieces, and now I had to say the final words to him, the man I once thought would walk beside me for the rest of my life. I stepped into the bedroom, my breath still quick. I didn't allow any hesitation to creep in. I looked straight into his eyes, my voice cold but resolute. I want a divorce. His eyes flashed with surprise. Then he sneered as if I'd said something ridiculous. Divorce? Are you serious? That's a funny joke. He joked, deliberately trying to diffuse the tension. I didn't flinch. I'm not joking. I've endured too much. You've lied, betrayed me right in front of my eyes, and stood silent. I can't live anymore in that fake and deceitful world. He sighed softly. I know you're hurting, but you have to understand that Claire and I are just friends. I clenched my fists, voice sharper. Friends? You call that friendship? You let her intrude into our marriage, treated me like a nobody. Don't ever use the word friends to justify your betrayal. His smile faded. Silence. After a moment, he grew uneasy and started trembling. Don't make this bigger than it is. I'm completely serious. He jumped out of bed and moved closer. Calm down. We can fix this. I'll change. He grabbed my hand tightly, trying to hold on like he was afraid I'd slip away. I pulled my hand away, stepped back, voice firm like a verdict. You've had hundreds of chances. Promised countless times to change. But you still chose her, still lied to me. The trust I had in you is broken. His eyes lost all confidence, hands trembling as he fiddled with the wedding ring on his finger. Please. I was wrong. Don't end this like this. He knelt down, holding onto my legs, begging tearfully. I took a deep breath, tears pouring down like a heavy rain. I looked at him with a mix of anger and pain, then exhaled coldly. There's no room left for your mistakes. Let me go. This is the last time." I pulled my hand from his grasp, turned my back, and walked away, leaving him kneeling in the room, choking on loneliness and defeat. My footsteps echoed in the empty room, marking the end of a chapter filled with lies and pain in my life. Once I decided to get a divorce, I knew I had to prepare thoroughly for what lay ahead. I found a reputable lawyer who helped me gather all the necessary evidence, from messages, calls, to photos and videos documenting my husband's betrayal. Each piece of proof was like a sharp dagger, giving me the strength to move forward. Meanwhile, my husband kept trying to mend things, comforting me with gentle words. But the moment I mentioned Claire or their relationship, he would instantly get angry, sometimes yelling and threatening, turning the atmosphere at home suffocatingly tense. It wasn't just my husband. Claire and his family didn't sit idle either. Claire secretly mocked me through my in-laws, blaming and fabricating stories to paint me as the villain in everyone's eyes. The gossip and sarcasm pierced my heart like needles every single day. My in-laws, under pressure and twisted stories from Claire, came to my house demanding I withdraw the divorce papers, claiming it would damage the family's honor. They didn't hesitate to insult me, mocking me as a useless woman who couldn't keep her husband, even calling me the destroyer of the family's happiness. Once, in a fit of rage and despair, I threw all the documents to the floor, the evidence detailing every word, every act of my husband's betrayal, to show them the undeniable truth. At first, my mother-in-law was skeptical, not believing what I presented. But day by day, witnessing her son's weak and fearful attitude, she grew panicked and scared as the veil of lies slowly lifted. She questioned her son with a tense and disappointed face. Seeing him avoid confrontation, she felt ashamed, embarrassed, and eventually left confused and exhausted. I couldn't bear the suffocating atmosphere in that house anymore. While waiting for the court hearing, I decided to move out and live on my own to find peace and privacy. I cut all contact, blocked his phone number and social media, to avoid being dragged into more arguments and pain. Though those days were full of pressure and loneliness, I knew I was on the right path, seeking freedom for myself. The day of the divorce trial finally arrived, and I walked into the courtroom with a steely mindset, like a resilient warrior after months of exhausting battles. My eyes were no longer those of a fragile woman who once cried over betrayal, but steel-cold and determined. Each firm step on the floor, I felt a powerful change within myself, from a wounded soul to a free woman daring to claim justice for herself. Opposite me stood him, once my husband, the life partner I had entrusted completely. Now he appeared gaunt, with evasive, cold eyes, never daring to look me in the face. The contrast made the space between us suffocating, as if an invisible wall separated everything. Memories, love, and promises, now reduced to shattered fragments. The trial unfolded with extreme tension. Evidence and testimonies were presented not only to divide assets or custody, but to expose the cruel, dark truth behind a marriage that once seemed perfect. Every word, every piece of evidence was like a sharp dagger piercing the heart, tearing apart the layers of carefully built masks. Outside the courtroom doors, whispers echoed down the hall. Their eyes followed every moment. No one looked away from that heartbreaking story. Some silently shed tears, others stayed quiet in sympathy and shock. I knew my story was not just an ordinary divorce, but a verdict of justice for silent wounds and deep betrayal. When the trial reached the division of assets, I was nearly stunned by his unexpected decision. Not the drawn-out disputes or endless demands and fights I had imagined, but a voluntary surrender of all shared property. He didn't ask for a single cent, no demands, only eyes flickering with fear and hesitation, like a belated apology he never dared to voice before. I stood there, overwhelmed by mixed emotions: surprise, emotion, and the unhealed wounds within. That apology, though late and unspoken, was an important milestone, helping me feel a measure of peace, a release to move forward on a new path. The gavel struck, a sound both ending and beginning, closing an old chapter, opening a new journey filled with hope and determination. Leaving the courtroom, I took a deep breath, feeling relief in every breath. Ahead lay a long road full of challenges and obstacles, but I was no longer afraid or confused like before. I stepped forward with a vibrant heart, firmly believing that a new life and new freedom awaited me. I didn't look back, knowing that what belonged to the past must be left behind. And I was ready for a life where I would be the master, the one who decides my own fate. Life after divorce isn't easy. It's not the rose-covered path I once dreamed of. But for me, it marked a powerful beginning of a new journey. A journey to reclaim freedom, independence, and to rebuild myself from the shattered pieces of the past. I decided to completely cut ties with the old memories, selling the house we once shared, saying goodbye to the belongings filled with memories, to start a new life without his presence. The small apartment I rented was simple, not luxurious, but it was where I found safety to breathe, to cry without fear of judgment, and where I gradually learned to live authentically. The early days after the divorce were lonely and empty. No more fiery fights, no more cruel lies, only silence, sometimes so cold it felt numb, making me feel isolated to the point of suffocation. But I knew this silence was necessary for my soul's healing process. I found support in the arms of friends and family, those who stood by me persistently, ready to share and encourage me when I was weakest. Thanks to them, I gradually opened up again, no longer hesitant or afraid of being hurt. Finding a new job was a major turning point, a way for me to prove my independence. Despite the hardships, I worked hard every day, turning every small success into a building block to rebuild my long-buried self-esteem. I don't forget the wounds of the past, but now I've learned to control them, not let them rule my life. I began to learn forgiveness, not for him, but for myself, so I could move forward on life's path without burdens and pain. Every morning when I wake up and face the mirror, I see a woman stronger than yesterday, someone who has endured every hardship but never broken, someone who knows how to love herself fully. Life after divorce, for me, isn't an ending but a powerful rebirth. It's a quietly burning flame, lighting the path ahead, helping me believe that no matter how stormy the world gets, I can still build happiness and peace for myself. One mild, sunny afternoon, I wandered alone through crowded shops, trying to forget the broken pieces of my past. Suddenly, my eyes caught a distant figure, him, my ex-husband, standing alone in the crowd like a lost soul. What caught my breath was his bare hand, no longer wearing the familiar wedding ring of old. Our eyes met for just a few seconds, no words needed, yet inside me a storm raged. We silently passed each other like strangers, but I knew this was the last time. Back home, I quietly opened my phone and dove into the virtual world, where all secrets are revealed. Posts and stories from friends and acquaintances about him, about Claire, about the times he avoided her, refused proposals, and blocked plans involving her. Reading this, my heart tightened, knowing even Claire was disappointed with him. A flood of mixed emotions surged within me: pain, loss, and finally, peace. I turned off my phone, feeling a cool breeze sweep through my soul, as if I had just closed a dark door to welcome a new journey with light ahead. That fleeting encounter was proof of my freedom to let go of the past, to release hatred, and to step into a life I deserve. I close this chapter not with resentment, but with firm belief that happiness comes to those brave enough to let go of the darkness and rise above.